Faith 180. You take your faith and you turn it around. Faith 180. Yeah.
One of these days, we'll do some sort of a semi-professional recording so you don't have to sing that every single time.
That's quasi-professional currently.
That is true. Welcome, everybody, to Faith 180, the podcast where mental health and faith collide. I'm one of your hosts, Tom Hazelton. The collision, it happened again. It happened right there in real time. Man, I love when it collides when I say that.
That wasn't a sound effect either.
No, that was just a collision. I'm one of your hosts, Tom Hazelton, and joining me, as always, through the power of the internet, Mr. Jordan Hamilton.
Hello, Throng.
Wrong. Did you Google again another word for a big group of people?
No, but that one came up a few weeks ago, and I've had it in the back of my mind ever since.
You're just waiting to pull it out. You were just waiting to pull it out.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, everybody. We're glad you're here. We have an awesome one today. I'm very excited for today's episode. But before we get into the thick of it, Jordan, tell me about your life.
Well, before we get to the fun stuff, we have to work through this little banter that we do. My life, Tom, has been quite good. I just got back from a few days on the road. Been great to be back with the family, and I think looking forward to tomorrow. That being Sunday, another day on the worship team, and just another day in the church building, and I enjoy that quite a bit. How's your life, Tom?
My life's good, little stressful. Randomly decided to rip my living room down to studs to fully insulate it.
Oh, I didn't realize I was in your living room.
You, me, and our guest are currently in my living room because it's nothing but studs, if you know what I'm saying.
So could we technically be in the living room and the bathroom at the same time?
Technically, I mean, use your imagination.
I'd rather not, but
But yeah, so that's what's going on right now. You know, middle of November. Let's rip all the walls down and get this insulated. You know what I mean? So my living room's a little out of commission at the moment, and we're just kind of hanging out upstairs. But what can you do?
we got a timeline on when that should all be back together.
Gyprock is going up on Monday, and then Crackfill is Tuesday and Wednesday. So we should hopefully be able to paint Thursday.
Oh, not too bad, my man. Yeah, that's nothing exciting like that going on in my life.
I wouldn't say it's exciting.
Well, it's something.
It is something. You are correct.
Announcements, Tom. I don't really have many. I just have a couple. Just kind of highlight our remaining schedule for the podcast for 2023. So, today's episode, where we've got a special guest joining us. Next week, we're going to have Court and Jess. So that's my sister and Tom's wife. Well, they won't be next week. We'll be back with our general banter episode. But after that, we'll have Court and Jess. And then our season finale is another pastor. I won't say who it is just yet. We'll wait a few more episodes, but we've got a semi-popular fella that's going to be joining us. Certainly a local legend, you would probably say. And then we're going to return in the new year with more content, fresh content, and we're going to be looking at, just little ways we can tweak and improve this podcast. So if you listen to the last episode, sound quality has gone up quite a bit, and we're quite happy with it. So that's kind of the plan for the next few weeks. That should take us till about Christmas, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll be back later in the new year. So, Tom, any statistics or announcements from you, my man?
No, sir. Not really much of anything. Just the standard. We keep continuing to grow, which is awesome. I'm not going to lie. Spotify impressions keep going up. Geographic locations keep opening up. It's the word is getting out there. And yeah, I just want to thank each and every person who clicks on us and gives us a chance.
The world is your oyster, Tom.
That is true. And with that, we are going to go into a segment, and it is a segment that only happens on Fridays, and it's super fun.
It's Fun Fact Friday.
Ba-dum-bum. That's the symbol, ba-dum-bum.
That's eerily similar to the the collision that happened between
That is eerily
faith
similar.
and
Maybe
mental
it's just a
health.
symbol. Yeah. Fun fact Friday. You prepared this fact. However, it is a longer fact, and I think I'm just going to read the first little bit of it, and then you can
It's
close it off.
it's kind of a conglomerate of facts, but I think we've kind of ran out of Bible fun facts for now. And something really popular right now is The Chosen. So that's the TV series, and there's some very interesting facts about that I thought a lot of our listeners would probably appreciate because I think a lot of them have watched the show. I haven't watched the show. I don't think Tom's watched the show. We plan on watching it.
Our
So
guest has watched the show, and I can guarantee our guest has watched the show because he had a watch along party of this show.
it's a good show, I've heard, and I'm gonna watch it. But Tom, what are the fun facts about The Chosen?
So, The Chosen is a multi seasonal television series about Jesus and his disciples, and it just might be the most popular Bible based media project in modern entertainment history. It's definitely the most popular Bible based series in recent years. The Chosen became the most successful crowd-funded media project of all time thanks to a donation-based straight-to-streaming strategy that attracted more than 400 million views worldwide and an estimated 94 million viewers.
That's incredible. I That's kind of reminiscent of, well, obviously we showed The Blind, but again, a movie that wasn't really popularized or picked up, and it seems like society has said, nope, we want this, and if Hollywood won't produce it, we'll make it ourselves. And I think that's phenomenal. That in today's day and age, that um, there's still a strong Christian based group of people that supports good Christian content. So I think that's very interesting. There's a few more fun facts about The Chosen. So they reached a new market last year when they released in theaters of Christmas with The Chosen. It was a film musical event that broke Fathom records for total gross and ticket sales. So Fathom was the distributor of that, and ironically, they were also the distributor on the Blind movie. Season 3 was filmed on a 900-acre set in Texas, so it's been filmed in America, and the 900-acre set is actually the new permanent home for the series. So it's just outside of Dallas. So it's an American produced show, and I think it's gotten great reviews. So
I've heard nothing but amazing things about it, and it is one of those shows. It's on the back burner, and I will be getting to it. I can't wait.
yeah, I might dive into that tonight, actually.
There you go. Let me know
So
what you think of the first episode when you're done.
yeah, no. Once we're done talking to our guest, I will likely put that on and give you some feedback. But before that happens, we have somebody we have to talk to.
I am very, very excited for this guest.
How excited are you, Tom?
I can't even put into words how excited I am for this guest. Should I just go straight into the introduction?
I think you should go right into putting into words how excited you are for this guest.
All right, I'm going to do this off the cuff. I have nothing written in front of me, but yeah, here we go. So I first met this guest a couple years ago when he was interning at the local church. He approached me one day after a Sunday and just introduced himself. And right away, I feel we kind of hit it off.
He probably wanted you to fill out a connection card so he could get your
No,
email.
this probably, but no, this was just, I think it was just strictly a, hey, I've seen you around. I want to get to know the people in the congregation. I'm going to come up. I'm going to talk to you. And despite our age difference, because I mean, this guy, he's super young, we hit it off right away. And I remember leaving that day thinking, hey, I hope he sticks around for a bit after. And, when the position for the youth pastor came up, he was the one hired to fill it. And I remember thinking, awesome, maybe I'll get to know this guy a bit better because I was involved with youth at that moment in time. And he came in and we sat down one day and he was just asking, he did with all the leaders, but he was asking me how I thought things were going, where we could improve, what we could do. And again, he was asking for my opinion, and I knew he was actually listening to it, which sometimes people ask for your opinion. You don't know if they're listening or not. And yeah, again, I started working with him very closely, and we got to know each other. I am very honored to call this person a friend as well as a pastoral mentor, because I we've had some pretty deep conversations about the Bible and whatnot. And yeah, he challenges me in many ways, not just from a Bible standpoint, but from a personal standpoint. And I like to think I challenge him as well, whether that's true or not. Maybe he'll elaborate. And we work very well with each other when it comes to the youth ministry. And with him leading it, youth has been thriving lately. And a lot of it has to do with the hard work that this individual is putting in. I tell him all the time I appreciate him. I don't know if he realizes just how much I appreciate him, but yeah, I appreciate this guy so much. And I am very happy that he is here today because he was one of our very first supporters of this podcast and
It's
someone to
me, isn't
really.
it, Tom?
It is you.
You've done this whole thing. You've got us all hyped up, and you're about to say, "Welcome, Jordan Hamilton, to the podcast."
Exactly. He was one of our first supporters. He was the one who said, just go with it, roll with it. I feel people are going to listen. I like what you guys are doing. Anytime I do anything church related, he's always the first person I ask for advice. So with that, I am very proud and I am very privileged to announce the one, the only Pastor Brett Smith.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Tom. That was an awesome
You're
intro.
welcome. I kind of rambled, but I hope I made some coherent sense there. But yeah,
You did.
I thought you did a phenomenal job, Tom.
thanks. Thanks for being here, Brett.
For a guy that didn't know how to put into words, you sure had a lot of words.
I had a lot of words. You are correct. Thanks for being here, Brett. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Pretty excited. Obviously, I've been journeying with you guys, just hearing how the podcast is going and listening to it. So it's kind of funny to be on this end of it.
Before we dive deep into it, Jordan, I don't know if I told you this, but Brett actually had me do announcements at youth on this past Wednesday and actually made me plug the podcast.
Oh, usually we're being told to stop plugging it. So to be invited to do that is phenomenal. So thank you, sir. Thank you for the exposure.
And Tom was wearing a shirt, so it worked out perfect.
Yeah, and it was also a good I let all the youth know that we were recording with Brett and to be on the lookout for that episode. They seemed really excited for that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And Brett just mentioned t-shirts. Be on the lookout in the new year. We're hoping to actually release a few t-shirts and hopefully some hats, but we're still in talks with different suppliers and stuff. So keep your ears peeled for that.
There we go. Be on the lookout for that.
Well, Tom, I think your introduction certainly set this episode up to be a phenomenal one. And I thought, why don't we just jump into some questions with Brett, like we do with everybody else, and see where this conversation takes us. So, Brett, on your journey, I guess, in life, how and why did you decide to become a pastor at your age, obviously? And did any experiences while you're growing up influence that and led you to pursue a career in ministry?
Before you answer that question, Brett, you're what, 22?
23.
23. Okay.
Good. It's a good question. I don't know if it was so much this is a cliche answer. I don't know if it was so much a decision as much as it was a call that I felt when I was 14 or 15, but there were experiences that led to that. Just for some context, I do not come from a family in ministry. I come from a long line of lobster fishermen, and that's kind of my heritage and my upbringing. So when I was 14, I had an encounter with God's presence that really changed me at a youth rally, and that was a pivotal point for me. And then it wasn't long after that this small Pentecostal church that was up the road from my house, our youth group went there. Obviously, it was part of the church, and the pastor there had us do youth services where we would sing and preach and share testimonies and all like the ministry things, like ministering to people through the Spirit's power. I remember me and my cousin like were and there was a couple others that practiced preaching, and hard to tell how brutal that preaching was or how much heresy was part of those sermons. But one of the things I always appreciated, again, I was like 14, 15, 16, was I had people in my church who said like, "Oh, you're gonna make such a great pastor, or you're such a good preacher," which I mean, classic old ladies just trying to, puff up the young guy. But there was something of like, okay, it planted that idea in my mind that I think it was on purpose. And I think God intended that. But even after when I started to realize that God might be calling me to full-time vocational ministry, I actually thought I initially understood my full-time ministry call as a call to global missions. And I hung on to that for a while, and in time that the understanding of that call changed. But that was my initial understanding of the call. And then through my teenage years, I kind of went back and forth. I didn't really want to accept the call. I wanted to pursue money. I wanted to pursue I want to be a physiotherapist. Actually, that was my kind of my job, my trajectory. I had a plan, and I reached a point in grade 10, I think it was, where I just came to a moment of surrender, and I'm like, I just can't do this my own way. Like, I got to stop trying to do this my own way. I do remember in grade 8, this is hindsight. In grade 8, we did a career project where you had to pick a career that you're interested in, and you had to write all about it. And I was fixated on finding a career, which I mean, I was only in grade 8, finding a career that I felt resonated with me. And I remember I sifted through career after career after career, and I just couldn't find anything. Like, yes, some that were interesting, yes, some that paid well, but none that really resonated with me, like on a soul level. And I remember I have this vivid memory for some reason of walking through Sobeys in Barron, mom was grocery shopping, and it was while I was doing this project, and I felt so exhausted from trying to figure out what to do with my life. And obviously, hindsight, now I know, is that God had a call on my life that I hadn't yet discovered, and so everything else felt off kilter or felt unnatural. So, fast forward, I accepted the call in the ministry and still resisted the idea of pastoral ministry. Personally, this is just the call that I feel God has on my life. I don't feel called to like one particular ministry or one particular church my entire life. I would not be surprised if there is a season of my life where I am a global missionary. I don't know. I can't see that far. But at least for the initial start to full-time vocational ministry, I accepted a call to be like a pastor or a church planner. That's what I studied at university. And Yarmouth Wesleyan is awesome because, I mean, not only do we have phenomenal leaders that I can learn from, but we also have 2 campuses, which were our church plants, which is what I feel like God might have in my future. So I had some friends that went to Kingswood University, were there. And for me, that was a no-brainer for where I should go to train for ministry. So I went there for 4 years, met some amazing people, stay in contact with a lot of awesome people, and loved every year of it.
So I want to just quickly kind of rewind, because now we're kind of at the point where you've gone through school. You're basically a minister at this point. One thing that struck me early in this conversation, you mentioned that you felt this I don't know, I don't remember how you put it, but you were at a youth rally and you felt the overwhelming presence. Mm-hmm. Can you put that into words somehow? I know it might be hard because I've also felt that at a much later time, but sometimes it's hard to put into words. The reason I'm asking is because I think a lot of today's youth, they're not a lot, but there may be some that experience that and then second guess it because of peer pressure or, just stigmas surrounding youth that are followers of Jesus or how that might fit into high school. So, for somebody that might listen to this and go, okay, what is that experience like? And how do I know? Any advice there?
Jordan had mentioned, how do you respond to that? How do you know that this is real? But at the same time, being at a youth rally is also very overwhelming, I guess you can say. So not only how do you know that this is real, but how do you know it's not herd mentality?
It's a great question. I was going to touch on that too. How I describe it, it just felt like abundant life at the pit of my being. Like that's just like scripture talks about rivers of living water. I don't know if that's helpful. When I was a teenager, I found that was a helpful description. To Tom's point, when you go to youth rallies, there's so much hype and adrenaline from being in the same room at this particular rally, probably 600 to 800 teenagers. So it is very easy to just buy into the hype, and you're here to have a good time, and emotions are part of that. I don't know, I don't know how I can describe this, but I think it is possible to differentiate emotions from the Holy Spirit. And the only way I was able to do that as a teenager, or the only way I could describe it, is that it felt very deep. It did not feel surface level. It did not feel reactive. It was very, very like it just felt deeper than the layer of my emotions. And in time, as I continue to grow, like I continue to discover what that was like. But I should also mention, leading into that rally, I hadn't experienced God's presence. So, and I was praying for two things. I was praying that God would prove, like, again, I'm a teenager. I was praying that God would prove that he exists. And I wanted to experience him like directly, because I went to a church who I seen people, raised hands. I seen people that seemed moved in worship, and I wanted that. And then the second prayer I was praying is like, God, I just need something. I need you to show me that you actually are out there. Like, I don't have much else to go off of. I'm new on my journey. And then come full circle to the rally. I think that God answered both of those prayers through an experience of his Holy Spirit. So for me, it just made sense. Like, it wasn't just emotion. There was also like some intellect involved, where I felt like God was trying to communicate to me. One, I want to have a direct one-to-one relationship with you. And two, here is my tangible Holy Spirit in your life. And because those were like both questions were answered at the rally, it just made sense. So yes, I felt something, like I felt something, but I also logically thought something as well. And so I think there's a few factors swirling there that caused me. But for months I had prayed like, God, I need something. Like, I need some sort of proof. And lo and behold, it was the rally where I was like, holy, this is God trying to really speak to me.
I had to chuckle when you said that that you kind of were like, in a sense, bargaining with God, like, hey, give me some type of sign, and you're kind of like, well, I was just a teenager, but I was just laughing because like me and Tom were grown men, and I can recount in the last 4 years a couple of times for us, like, hey God, if you do this, I'll do this, and
Right.
I just find that kind of funny. The other thing that I think is very relatable, and I think Tom would agree with me, is when I certainly felt the presence of God for the first time, there was a significant distinction of something I hadn't felt before. It wasn't like an empty feeling of, okay, this is just, something that's going to temporarily make me happy. It certainly felt rooted. So I find it phenomenal when we can draw comparisons like that.
You go to the youth rally, you get inspired, you then decide to go to Kingswood, as you so said, to become a pastor. After you're done in Kingswood, or probably the last year of Kingswood, you had to do some interning. Is that how that worked?
Yep.
All right. And then after the interning, you were lucky to get hired at the same church that you interned at, so you already kind of hit a foot in the door with the congregation. So I'm just curious how that kind of came about. Like, how did you get positioned at Yarmouth Wesleyan, and then how did you ultimately get hired as the youth pastor?
Great question. I was an intern 2 summers in a row at Yarmouth Wesleyan, but as far as Kingswood is concerned, I have to do a 4-month internship, which was January to April. So my internship, air quotes, was technically in Ontario. One of AJ's friends, who was a Pastor Ben Lass, phenomenal guy. So I did my 4 months in Ontario Southgate Church. Love that church to pieces. They took care of me. They taught me a ton. I have great friends still from that area. But while I was there, that's when AJ reached out to me. AJ had known me because I had spent a couple summers as a summer student at Yarmouth Wesleyan, like you alluded to, Tom. So around, I don't know, February or March, I was probably having conversations with AJ of 2022. So still in Ontario and had a job offer from Ontario as well, and was just trying to discern what God wanted me to do. So it really helped that AJ and the pastor from this other church, they were really good friends, and they were really supportive of whatever decision I went with, which took the pressure off me. That way you don't feel like guilted into anything. So I don't want to take those healthy dynamics for granted, because I recognize that not all workplaces or environments, or even churches for that matter, are that case. So it was we had a few conversations over the course of several weeks, because obviously AJ is trying to clarify what his expectations and the church's expectations would be for a youth pastor. I'm trying to clarify what my expectations would be, or what I understand a youth pastor to be, who I am, who I'm not, who can I be, who can't I be. Just making sure we're all on the same page. So I'm really thankful that AJ was super patient with me through the process. I didn't feel rushed at any point, but it was hard to turn down the offer from the other church because of how the friendships I had there was awesome. And it would have been easier probably to stay there, because I was there, right? So it was hard to make that decision, but I'm so thankful to be at Yarmouth Wesleyan.
And we're thankful to have you.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome, buddy.
Yeah, I remember. I think I remember Brett's first sermon. Namely, because half of his community showed up, and there wasn't a seat to be found in the building.
True.
Brett's from Lindsay's community area,
yep.
Where Lindsay is now, and when Brett preaches, they come down and they listen to Brett preach.
It's true.
I think I remember the first sermon that he gave. That was back when I was. What year was that, Brett?
The summer 2020.
Yeah, I think that was when I was kind of still like almost hitting my my lowest point, and we'll talk about this later in the podcast. But there's something that you brought up to me at a later date about my wife and I that was kind of ironic. After the fact, we'll talk about that after. I think Tom's got another question for you, but I remember that first, sir. I just remember showing up and being like, "What is going on today? Like, did the rapture happen and it's here at the church?" And I walk in and it's there's a Smith preaching.
As the youth pastor, what unique perspectives do you bring to the role, given your age and your connection to the younger generation?
I think some youth pastors, or I should say, I think some students view their youth pastors as like, friends, or depending on the age, like father figures. I think because of my age, I play a bit of a big brother role, like, which involves tough love, or oftentimes giving counsel to students that I wish I had received when I was a student. So I feel like I play a bit of a big brother role, which usually leads to respect. I have awesome students, like, as you know, Tom, like, we have awesome students.
Kids are amazing.
Yeah. So I feel like I graduated from high school in 2018. I'm not too far removed from them. I've been called old a few times, believe it or not. But I'm not that far removed that I'm not out of touch with like firsthand experiences with what they're going through. Obviously, I went to Barrington High. I didn't go to Yarmouth High, so even that's a little different. But I think I'd like to think that students do view me as more of a big brother, which does lead to open opportunities. And I've been there. Like, I've countless times in conversations with students, I've said, like, I know how you feel because I was literally there, 6 years ago. Even going to youth rallies, like, I almost always preface a youth rally with saying I was 14 years old when I first experienced the Holy Spirit, and you just don't know how God will show up when you're expectant. So even my story and how God has formed me and shaped me, a lot of it happened as a teenager. So I feel like that helps when it comes to doing ministry as well.
One of the things I've caught myself saying more recently is I would really not like being a Christian youth or just any type of youth, really, in today's world. And they face a lot of challenges when it comes to mental health. You, as a youth pastor, how do you address these challenges?
What you just said, Jordan, I say that literally every week to the people, like I say kids, but the youth at youth group. When I see that they're down and I see they're having a hard time, I'm like, being a teenager in 2023 is hard. Being a Christian teenager in 2023 is almost impossible.
Yeah.
And and they seem to appreciate that I'm that open about it and address it, and I, for lack of a better term, understand what they're going through. So anyway,
the first step, as we've obviously talked about, is removing stigmas around talking about it, and for adults, it's one thing to ask for help. I think for youth, it's almost a little more intimidating because you have such peer pressure aspect. Mm-hmm. I have a peer pressure aspect. I think we all still do as adults, but it's not. It doesn't affect you in terms of your emotional well-being and your self-worth. I think you reach a point as an adult, and some people don't, where you're able to manage that a little bit better or seek help for it. But I don't think a lot of the youth do that. So as a youth pastor, what is your strategy? Do you have one? What's Brett's path when it comes to assisting somebody that's going through some mental health challenges?
That's a great question. I feel like there's a lot of layers to that. The first thing I would say is obviously I shouldn't say obviously, but at least I view mental health as one of the aspects, obviously, of our whole being, but which means that it's one of the aspects of our journey towards Christ likeness and journey, one of the elements of our journey towards God. And so, practically speaking, we do one-on-one conversations all the time. Not just me as the youth pastor, like Tom said, plenty of conversations with students. I have awesome leaders that are available. Even just strictly having somebody to talk to. I don't want to undervalue that. So on a weekly basis, whether it's at youth or through the week or through a few other means, we meet one-on-one so that students can talk, vent. Some students don't just want to vent. Some want like solutions. We have a prayer hotline where you can text your prayer requests to a prayer, like a number that is shared amongst a few leaders. So oftentimes it involves mental health or lack thereof, whether it has to do with stress at school or a family situation. Like there's a sense of urgency to it. So not only as a pastor, but as a follower of Jesus, I firmly believe in the power of prayer. And I believe that God responds to us when we step out and seek his help. So if students are texting the prayer hotline, then we have 3 to 4, or however many leaders that can respond, say, we're taking some moments right now to pray for that. Thanks for bringing that up. So I can't take any credit for that. One, we have Loren, who's an awesome leader, and she oversees all the prayer elements at youth group, which is awesome. We had one of our grade 11 students who initiated this Journey. I don't know if she'll listen to this, but Journey kind of started the process for wanting to get these bracelets and have the hotline on it. So as a youth pastor, I'm not taking any credit for that. I wish it was my genius idea, but it came from our students. It came from Journey. And then all the students have just spread the word and passed out prayer bracelets, which is cool. And then I think through the way we teach and the way we talk about things at youth group is helpful for mental health, because I can offer myself and I can be available to students, but there are promises in scripture that we talk about on a weekly basis that have brought healing to my health, or brought healing to my life as it relates to mental health, and I know can bring healing to other people. So even when it comes to if we're talking about how God gives us purpose, that alone, you don't know how that shifts in somebody's mind or heart, because somebody could be going through a rough time mental health wise because they don't know what their purpose is, and they feel like there's there's no point, right? So now we're opening up the Word of God and we're unpacking what is purpose. What does it mean that you have purpose? What does it mean that you have spiritual gifts that God wants to use? So through our teaching, I think just holistically speaking, it addresses just needs that we all have as humans. And I don't want it to sound like I'm addressing those needs. I believe it's God's presence and God himself that addresses those needs through people and through the church. And what else is there? Discussion groups. Like we create spaces for students to talk about things with other students. Tom oversees the hangout room at youth group. Yes, it's a time to build relationships, but it's also a space where there can be prayer and there can be support if there needs to be. So even in our weekly rhythm, it accommodates for, is there somebody who needs to have a conversation? Is there somebody who is working through something significantly on a mental health level? I'm probably even, I really, one of my values in youth ministry is I don't want to treat them like kids. And technically, I mean, we're working with ages 11 to 18. So, I mean, some are kids in that age range. But another thing that I like to do as best as I can, I'm trying to get better at it, is giving them responsibility. I did the math. I don't know if we have 25 to 35 students that help in some way in our church family on a regular basis. So whether they help with the kids program at our church, whether they help with seniors, with special events, with tasks at youth group, with tasks after youth group, with Sunday morning, from cameras to snacks to trunk or treat that we just did, from mac and cheese Monday. I think there is a dignity piece that comes with that. And my youth leader did that great when I was a student. And I think our students want purpose, and purpose like obviously impacts your mental health. If you don't feel you have a purpose, then you're going to wrestle with those questions and you will have despair and walk through that. So there's that. And I don't know. I feel like I could keep going, but I think those are the core ones.
Well, one of the big things I keep hearing is space. And I think maybe for any adults of children that are listening, one of the things that I think is very important is creating a space where youth can feel like they're able to be open in themselves and talk about the issues they're facing. And again, a lot of that peer pressure sometimes from outside friend groups that they don't go to youth group together. Those voices can sometimes make you think that there's no space for me to discuss these things. So I think a big thing I heard you talking about is just creating a space. And I think even like Tom being in the hangout room, that's just a space where people can feel, themselves.
That hangout room is, and again, I thank you all the time for giving me that responsibility of the hangout room. I love it. I look forward to it every single week. There's not really much structure. We don't have discussion groups. I don't have a bunch of questions I'm asking them, but I get to see them just be themselves and be natural and how they interact with each other. And I take the time to try and get to know every single one of them. And I'm able to see when they're not themselves.
Yep.
And that's when I kind of am just kind of like, hey, what's going on? Like, I try to subtly nudge them to talk. Can I pray for you? Can I whatever? And yeah, I've had some pretty powerful moments in that hangout room. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. And it's moved me to tears, and it's put, a few of these kids just in my normal everyday prayer, just hoping that they're getting through. And yeah, that hangout room, I love it. Every Wednesday.
I wish everyone on the pod could see Tom in action in the prayer in the hangout room. He's awesome. There's another thing I'd like to add. I completely forgot about. One, I recognize we are not counselors. I'm not a counselor. Tom is not a counselor. So we are very quick we have counselors part of our church. We often give contacts or direct some students to the appropriate counselors. And suicide intervention training is another one. We're in the works of planning a group intervention training, but a couple of us leaders have taken a course through Assist for those of you who are familiar with that organization. So even those, if needed, if someone is in a mental health crisis, then at least we have some training to be able to respond to that. So those are elements as well. And even as far as we have policies and procedures that protect students. Our leaders are awesome, and I care a lot about our culture. And I wouldn't want anyone to join our team who I feel is a threat to the students. That doesn't happen. But we still all have criminal background checks. We all still adhere to certain policies and procedures to make sure the right boundaries are in place. And so all of that is to create a safe environment. Our students who are coming to South Shore Youth on Wednesday nights, not all come from healthy environments, and we know what kind of impact that has on a developing person's mental health.
We're pretty stringent when it comes to a lot of those boundaries and whatnot. So yeah, and it's good. And not only does it protect them, but it protects us too, if we're being honest.
Exactly.
Have you noticed any specific trends or issues in the mental health of the youth you work with, and how do you respond to these concerns? I would think personally, cyberbullying would be a big one, strictly with how everything is. But again, I don't work with the youth as much as you do.
Yeah, that is always the case, unfortunately. And so much of, as the root of that, Tom, even is an unhealthy use of social media and technology is just so present. I hate, I don't like to be the guy that says that, because it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, because everybody knows, and it's not just students, it is everybody. Like the 50-year-old on their phone is the same as a 14-year-old on, as far as screen time goes. So I don't want to create the impression that it's just a teenager problem, but it can be amplified because your mind is still developing. So I see that a lot. One of the concerns that I do have, and I want to be careful how I share this, because it's very nuanced once again, but because of our healthcare system and because of how bogged down it is and broken it is, and I mean, we don't have to go into detail about that. I do fear, based off what I've heard and how I've interacted with students, that doctors can be too hasty to prescribe medication. That being said, I am not against medication by any stretch. I am concerned when other lifestyle factors aren't considered. So if I know a student is taking medication for a specific mental illness, that's totally fine. But I often ask other questions. Like, this is just me trying to be a supportive youth pastor and take their whole being into account. What do you like? Are you sleeping at night? Do you have quality sleep? How many hours are you sleeping? What's your screen time?
This sounds a lot like Rat Park, and where they talk about, our physicians asking those questions, and the questions you're posing are exactly those questions. Is what is your lifestyle like? What is your
what's your support system?
Yeah,
all that stuff. And I totally agree. Like, we've already talked about this on the podcast, and I think you need to. I say all the time, you can't beat a dead horse because it's dead. But in reality, in reality, yeah, you're exactly right. They don't. I think a lot of times, and we talked about this. It's not that psychiatrists aren't doing their job. I think it's just the counseling aspect of it gets overlooked as being, oh well, it's something that maybe I should do eventually. And I think what I'm trying to say is medication can become, and I'm on medication, no shame in it. It keeps me very level headed, and it's made me a lot better person. So I have nothing wrong with that. I think that sometimes gets looked at in the hierarchy as being the ultimate solution, and we tend to ignore or passively look at counseling as, oh, I don't want to talk to somebody about my feelings. And Tom's even said before, like, when he was in the hospital, they're coming in and asking, how are you doing? Do you want to talk about it? And again, that's not even counseling. It's great that they're asking those questions, but at the end of the day, spaces where deep conversation can be had, where we can actually look at the root causes of certain problems, where we're not just analyzing, okay, this is how you're feeling. Let's try this. Let's consider, what are these youth going through at home? Who are their social circles? How much time are they spending on social media?
Yeah.
Do they look to social media for that acceptance? And for me and Tom, I think we realized at the end of the day that has to come from Jesus, in the Christian perspective. So I just find that it's very interesting when we draw parallels on this podcast. And when you started talking about that, I was like, Rat Park, Rat Park,
Rat Park.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all. That's what I would add. Is I am concerned about that, and ultimately that's a decision that students have to make between them and their parents. But I still want to. God has created us as holistic beings, so I still ask the question, like, your sleep is important, like your nutrition is important, your exercise is important, and that has affected my mental health. And I remember going to university and being so stressed out about homework and getting the right grades to maintain the scholarships, and just the gym alone just being a healthy outlet for me to get my mind off it. So yeah, that's what I did.
You're speaking to two people who know the importance of the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, Tom, when I checked in this week to my hotel, I thought about the podcast because she looked at me and said, and will you need to know where the gym is in the morning? And I stepped back and looked at my stomach, and there was a cultural barrier where I don't think she understood my sarcasm. I said to her, does it look like I've gone to the gym any morning this week? And she just was like, here's your room key, sir. So she didn't get it, but I really like this next question, because I think when I just read it, I drew something out of here that I think you should talk about, and it's, can you share any personal experiences or lessons you learned during your own youth that helped you connect with and support with the youth that you pastor? And one of the things I know about you, Brett, is that you played high school hockey. And I would have coached against you. You wouldn't have known me that well back then. But we certainly, as you as a player, I mean, I played high school hockey. We know the conversations. We know the peer pressure surrounding that, popularity stuff. So I'm sure you've had some sort of experiences that, I have myself, but anything you remember as a youth that challenged you that's been helpful dealing with youth today as a pastor?
I've been asked a lot of hard questions in front of an entire locker room, and I've even been asked some vulnerable questions in front of an entire locker room. So I mean, these are great friends of mine who I'm still friends with, but it did feel they weren't Christians. Like, I was the only follower of Jesus, I think, on every single hockey team every year, if I'm not mistaken. And I felt like I was like a sheep among wolves, not in like a derogatory way, but it's just like, I'm the only one on this team that has the worldview that I have and has the values that a follower of Jesus has. And so I've been asked a lot of hard questions, a lot of questions that I didn't really want to answer. I have been put on the hot seat, and I know the things that are brought up, the criticisms, the ridicule, experienced all of that. Thankfully, a few years into that process, it does lead to respect. I tell my students this, like, the same people in high school that ridicule you for following Jesus are the ones that come to you in their 20s asking, how can I get out of this rock bottom that I'm finding myself in? So all that to say, I feel like the ones that play hockey, the ones that play sports in general, where the locker rooms aren't always healthy, I resonate with that. Students have initiated those conversations with me too, like, hey Brett, how did you deal with this when you were playing hockey? How did you deal with this when you were playing this sport or that sport? And it makes me it makes me be grateful for the experiences God gave me and the way He tested me and refined me. But I like to think that experience is helpful. I think it's relatable for students, but I often even probably don't reflect enough on how much God used those seasons to refine me and challenge me to be more secure.
I'd like to say that I went through high school and maintain that type of willpower. But, unfortunately, I fell victim to things of the world. And I think that's a lot of people's story. Obviously, that's not my story. But to hear that, I think is encouraging. It's very powerful, especially to any youth listening to this. And that's, don't waver for other people. If you're going to waver for anybody, do it for Jesus. And you're gonna see the results come back, and you're gonna feel that love and acceptance that you need. And within a Christian community, I think you're gonna find true acceptance. And it's not that your friends didn't accept you. I'm not saying that at all, because I was in a very similar situation in high school. And even like when I came back home and I started coaching high school hockey, I've heard the conversations in the locker room. One of the things that we implemented early was like, we're going to keep our language clean. And, obviously at that level, there's a no alcohol or tobacco policy. And it was adhering to that and sticking to it. And our goal is just to be examples to the youth, and hope that, when they grow up, that they would, see that you can coach hockey, you can be part of that as a clean Christian speaking person. So yeah, I think it's phenomenal that you're able to come through that.
One big thing that I tell the youth pretty much every week, if I'm being honest with you, is don't give up your beliefs to just fit in. And I've had a lot of those discussions with a lot of people about they're trying to fit in with a certain crowd, they're trying to whatever, or they're trying to change themselves to fit in better. And I'm just like, you don't need to change yourself. If you can't be accepted for who you are, then they're not really worth your time. But I also understand being in junior high or high school. I understand the need to want to be accepted. I get that. I really do. And it is hard and it is a tightrope, but that is a conversation that I do have quite frequently with the youth is, don't sacrifice your beliefs to fit in.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think social media just kind of magnifies that, because everybody's beliefs are in your face all the time.
Right.
So it's so easy to like see other things that you might gravitate to. And I think of like, even, I don't know, I had dial up and then high speed internet, but like that transition itself, we went from like being people that didn't know anything to, okay, you have access to all the other religions, man, now that I say that, growing up, I don't really, I didn't know about other religions. Certainly that was protected, and it was easily protected, because I couldn't go online and read about it or see that my friend, Johnny is doing this thing or that thing. So,
but isn't it funny that we now have the easiest access to knowledge? We have the entire world's knowledge in our pocket.
Stupid.
But we are the dumbest generation right now. And I really feel it's because we've gotten complacent at the fact that knowledge is there. We don't have to seek knowledge anymore. But that's a rabbit hole for another day.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to junior high and not have to buy a T9 calculator would be phenomenal.
Right.
There you go.
Now they just download the T45 or whatever, and Bob's your uncle. Staples is not getting my $140. I can tell you that.
So, Brett, how do you balance your responsibilities as a youth pastor and your personal life and self-care to prevent burnout?
Love that question. For those who know me quite well, like I'm pretty rigid with some of this stuff. The obvious one would be a Sabbath rest. So as a follower of Jesus, I believe that God intends, it's one of the 10 commandments that God, that we would observe the Sabbath. God rested after 6 days of creation. He rested on the seventh day. So as a staff, we practice Sabbath on Fridays. So just obviously we serve and we're on Sundays. So we make it the rule that on Fridays we Sabbath. So for me, I will not answer messages. I will obviously if it's urgent or if it's urgent, it's different. But I won't dabble in like ministry things. I won't let my mind go back into like work because I know how easily I can get caught up in that. So and some Thursday nights, into Friday for my Sabbath, I go to visit mom and dad on Cape Island, and even that's really good for my headspace because it distances me from all the things. Like if I have all these projects that I'm working on and all of these students that I'm connecting with, and I have and I care about it and I'm passionate about it, but I only have a certain amount of energy to give, and I have that one day to refuel. The fact that I like even driving 45 minutes away from Yarmouth, it does shift something in my mind that helps me like relax. It's like, okay, I can not do. I can just be for today. I don't have to focus on the tasks that I have to get done. Yes, I still have, things that, grocery shopping if I got to do that, or, clean up the apartment, that kind of thing. But I make sure to keep Friday as a rest day. So that's kind of the focal point in my week. Most mornings I spend time in prayer and reading scripture. Again, those are spiritual disciplines, spiritual practices, but they do affect my mental health. I love to journal. That's one thing that I internally process things. A lot of people are external processors. I find that if I can get down just what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking in a journal, it just brings clarity to my mind. I am introverted by nature, so I love to go for walks in the woods by myself. That's how I recharge emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I find like as an introvert, and again, I used to downplay this so much because I didn't know what introversion was, extroversion. I didn't know that people were wired differently. If I spent every single moment with a person for 2 weeks straight, I would start. It's never ever reached that point, but I would probably have panic attacks. I don't know. I don't understand how mental health plays into that, like introversion, extroversion, personality conversation. But I just feel rejuvenated when I'm by myself, specifically in nature. That's another kind of focal point as far as practices go. I have somebody who we'll call a mentor or a spiritual director. So somebody who lives in another province, who's much older and wiser than me, who I can talk with, kind of process things with, which is helpful. I have an accountability partner who holds me accountable to obviously my relationship with Jesus, but in that it's like I'm processing some life decisions there. He would give me affirmation where I may be doubting myself, or he may hold me accountable when I'm getting to ahead of myself, that kind of thing. I think that plays into it as well. That way I'm not just operating off my own judgment, because that can get dangerous, as it could for anyone. And then I try to be careful with like, again, I don't want to come back to technology, but the thing about being a pastor is that, how do I put this? Sometimes you're just never off. So AJ said this before, like if you're a mechanic and you go to the grocery store and you run into somebody who you fix their car, it's like the person is not gonna say like, can you fix my car right now? And you're just gonna say, I don't have, like, I'm not at my shop, I'm at the grocery store, right? Being a pastor, obviously it's not just a job, it's a call, and it involves your lifestyle. So if I'm a pastor and I go to Sobeys and I run into somebody from the church, like that could turn into prayer, that could turn into like a half of a counseling session, like that could just engage parts of me that, like if I go in the evening after like a day at the office, and then I end up having like a 45-minute conversation at the grocery store, and then like that can affect all sorts of things. So anyways, my point is that as a pastor, you're very accessible, and with technology, it's even more amplified. And so I'm very careful with how I use my phone, or when I'm on Messenger, or when I wind down at night, like I don't check my messages, because then my mind goes back, it clicks back in to work mode or serve mode. So those are little things that I try to keep in check as well, because obviously I'm here to serve people, but I'm also not like omnipotent or all present either. So
Yeah, I wanted to say too that like I think some people might hear that and go, "Oh, well, pastors don't want to talk to us when we're in the grocery store." It's
Nope.
like, well, when are they gonna disciple to us? And let me assure everybody who's asking that, uh, I can't speak for other churches, but certainly the one I go to, these guys are in and out of the building constantly, meeting with
Yep.
people. There's funerals. We heard this from Pastor Dave. Funerals.
I was just about to say we
There's
talked about this with
weddings.
Dave. Yeah.
There's it doesn't end. And you know what? At the end of the day, you guys are humans who chose a calling that was pastoral, and you need time to unwind. You need time to focus on you, so that the tank isn't empty when people, you know, do need that pastoring. And
I don't know if you remember, Brett, when you and I first started getting to know each other. I don't say this anymore because I don't feel I have to, but I'd be like, hey, come out to my house, come out to whatever. And I would always say to you, and by the way, I'm asking Brett Smith to come out. I'm not asking Pastor Brett. And I feel, I like to think that you took that as oh, hey, he's not going to expect me to, whatever. I can just be myself. I can just hang out. And like I said, now I feel I don't have to say it to you because you know that I know that Pastor Brett and Brett Smith are two completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
Not two completely different people, but sometimes Pastor Brett has to stay at work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's one thing that I've always been pretty open with.
I equivocate that to like, and this is something I would never do, and I don't think a lot of people would. I mean, there's extreme cases where people will just do this, but it's like your doctor in the grocery store. And
look at this lump.
Well, and I think the distinction is, or the separation occurs when, in a roundabout way, even though healthcare in Canada is complementary, we are still in a way paying for a service, whereas pastoral staff are more like a complimentary breakfast, to put it lightly. My point is if you're there and available, people are going to partake. And whereas a doctor is seen as a service, he's not available in public settings to partake of because you don't have the means to transact with him. So I think there's just a vulnerability to being in a pastoral role. And it's important to remember that, people that work at call centers get burnt out. People that work at Tim Hortons get burnt out. Pastors get burnt out. And I just wanted to really highlight that. Before we get into our last question of the podcast, and Brett, let me just first say thank you for coming on with us. This has been a very informative conversation, and I hope that, adults, youth, everybody will share this so that we can get the message out. You're a bit of a YouTube sensation. You like to do some fishing videos with, I believe, your cousin. And I just wanted to know, is there anything upcoming? Maybe we can give him a shout out. I really like his content. If you're into fishing and that, Brett has done some media himself, and it's just beautifully done. Your cousin's a great videographer. So anything upcoming there? And then we'll get one more question for you.
I'm not sure what he's got in the works. I think me and him might have a chance to go either duck hunting or deer hunting here in the next couple of weeks. But check out Fins and Tails on YouTube. My cousin Josh does an awesome job he's a videographer by trade, and loves to hunt and fish. And so he's highlighted a few of our fly fishing annual trips. And
yeah, they're cool videos.
He just dropped the merch line, and so he's got some clean merch. He's very creative, very, very creative. So I love his merch. I love his videos, of course. I mean, I'm his cousin, so I'm supporting him either way. But and to tie that in with what we've been talking about, like hobbies, like those are outlets for me. Like to do our annual fishing trip, and we're just driving around Nova Scotia, going to random rivers. Like you're spending time on the water. Like that is such a wonder to your mental health. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Leave everything at home and just enjoy God's creation.
Exactly.
Everything around you. And I think that's kind of the true spirit of fishing, is like obviously you know where your honey holes are, but what type of reward is it when you find a spot you've never been to before? It's like hit, 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 fish everywhere.
Yep.
And in the back of your mind, it just must be like, God put them here.
Yep.
They didn't just appear out of nowhere. The other thing that, before I do ask the honest last question, early on when you were at Yarmouth Wesleyan, you used to see my wife and I flirting with each other in church. And I thought it was kind of cute when you told me that, because I didn't ever think of myself as the flirtatious type. So,
you flirt with me every time you see me.
well, that's uncontrollable at this point.
That's true.
So yeah, I just thought that was interesting that even in your early days, you were observing everybody, and I certainly wasn't serving in any capacity at that point, but I certainly like to tease my wife during services.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing this younger couple and I was like, man, they are just, you were teasing her and she was getting giddy just responding to you.
Yep, that's me. I should have been paying attention probably to the service.
I was gonna say, like, if I would have asked that young couple what the sermon was on, they probably had no idea.
No, I do remember the Luke 15 service, that's for sure. But again, thanks for coming on with us. Just the last question, and we kind of asked this to everybody, but essentially, what is your advice to give to other young adults considering a career in youth ministry or ministry in general, based on your own experiences?
I would say that it is a call and it has to be a call. For any other reason, you will be disappointed because people are awesome and people are difficult. And if God doesn't call, then you will be frustrated to the point of wondering why you're doing it. So be open to how God wants to lead. Be sensitive to the expression of your calling is not your identity. Like our identity is first and foremost in Christ, and it can easily become our identity if we're not careful in our hearts. But if there's a young adult out there who's considering being a pastor, I would just say seek the counsel of the people who know you best, who follow Jesus. See if they're able to speak into, like, discern with people, process with people, because God has given the church people with the gift of discernment, the gift of wisdom, and those people God actually moves through to affirm calls and to encourage calls. And so that's what it was for me. And I try to do that with our students too, to the best that I can. But ultimately, it comes down to, if you are called, are you willing to walk the path that Jesus has set out for you?
Yeah, I know Tom brought you onto the podcast, so I'm going to kind of give him the last word. But again, appreciate you coming on. I think it's very relevant information. Any plans for the next week or so? Anything interesting happening? I know you guys just got back from Encounter. Just briefly touch on that if you want to.
Sure.
I am so jealous I didn't get to go this year. I wanted to go so bad.
I wish we could have had you. Yeah, Encounter's a youth rally held at Kingswood University in Sussex, New Brunswick, which is where I went to university. And there's probably 300. No, I know there was 340 students there, 340 teenagers there for this rally. So 6 hours away, or 6 and a little bit away from Yarmouth. So it's quite a hike. Awesome time. I thought, worship was awesome. We heard some encouraging messages from scripture, and just a lot of students I don't know, when you're in a room with a lot of students who are worshiping Jesus, like we talked about, when you come from environments where you're the only Christian, when you come from schools or families even where you're the only Christian, like, you sense God's hand when you see hundreds of students in the same boat as you, worshiping Jesus with arms up in the air. And so that's the highlight for me. I mean, those are the spaces where I encounter Jesus, and so that's why I'm excited that our students have the same opportunity. But it was awesome. I took the whole week to catch up. It's literally a week since we were there, and this morning I think I slept in till like 10:30 because I was so tired from the week and didn't have time to recuperate.
One thing I do want to point out is Brett was playing Faith 180 in the van on the drive
True.
back from New Brunswick.
True. I forgot about that. Thanks for bringing that up, Tom.
You're welcome, buddy.
That's why our listenership went up by 3.
Exactly.
Honestly, though,
Brett,
like it's a resource for like our students as well. Like, there's no reason our students can't listen to this and feel encouraged. So, like, just as a shout out to you guys, like, keep doing what you're doing because it matters.
Thank you.
the students who have approached me that have listened to it already, they've thanked me for doing it, and they've even pointed out like it's encouraging to know I'm not alone with these feelings. And just hearing somebody that they know and somebody I hope they trust expressing the same feelings that they're having, and I'm, double their age. So it seems to be doing some good with the youth for sure. But Brett, seriously, thank you for taking the time to come on. I just want to thank you personally for everything you've done for me, continue to do for me, the challenges you give me, the encouragement you give me. You have nothing but my respect and nothing but my praise. And yeah, just thank you for everything you do for me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for the support as well, too. So that was Pastor Brett Smith joining us on Faith 180 tonight. What'd you think of that, Jordan?
You know what? I've been looking forward to this episode only because I think it's like, as much fun as it is to get out and joke around and laugh, there's times where I think there's relevant content, especially given the social times or, whatever's going on socially. And I think this is one of those things that's going to really connect and relate with people. And that's a huge win in my book. It's great to hear from a youth pastor. It's phenomenal to know that there are young people that still want to get into pastoring. There was a period of time where the only pastors I knew had very gray hair, if they had any at all. And it's just very encouraging to hear from a youth pastor, to hear that they're working to create space where youth feel comfortable, and that they are actively seeking to help overcome mental health challenges through Christ in a safe, welcoming environment. So,
and
I thought it was phenomenal.
He's crushing it. He really is. And we have a ton of youth that are coming every week. And I mean, it's the team as a whole, but I mean, he's super present. He's always there. Everyone knows who he is. And yeah, he crushes it.
Well, dude, I rolled in there Monday and it was Mac and Cheese Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And like they announce that every Sunday, and on the back of my mind, it's 20-30 kids that need assistance. And I walked in there and it was a social event.
I went there a couple weeks ago.
There were students everywhere, and I just thought, you know what, they're in the right building. Who cares if they need mac or cheese or not? Let them socialize in a church setting. Again, it's opening that space up to say, this is a sanctuary. It is sacred, but at the same time, Jesus was welcoming, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had his arms open. And I think Mac and Cheese Monday, I was just blown away, to be honest. I hear it get announced, and I think, we're probably impacting some families. We're there, not us, the church community who helps put this on, who donates the mac and cheese. You guys are making an impact. So if you've never walked in there on a Monday, it was just
walk in there on a Monday.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. What you're doing is making an impact. Keep helping, bring kids into that facility and create that space. But, to sum it up, I thought it was a phenomenal chat.
Yeah, same here. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Faith 180. We're going to keep rolling on. We're going to keep the episodes coming. Like Jordan had said at the beginning of the episode, we're probably going to take a couple weeks off here closer to the Christmas season and then go into the new year. But we have some ideas to come back better, more efficient, more improved. And yeah, hope you'll join us for that. So with that, Jordan, can you please sweetly serenade me with an outro?
Faith 180, you take your faith and you turn it around. Faith 180. Yeah.
Perfect.
Faith 180 is an independent podcast featuring, produced, and edited by Thomas Hazelton and Jordan Hamilton. Got a question, suggestion, or a story of your own Faith 180? Email faith180crew@gmail.com. Faith 180 is available everywhere you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review and turn on notifications for when a new episode goes live. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are worthy of God's grace.